Well, the course really evolved out of a book that was writing itself over the last several years, paralleling my music appreciation course, which worked so well that I kind of took the parts that worked best out of that, and I made a book out of it. And then I made a 15 semester course out of it for freshman studies starting in 2020 when we were locked in masks and everything else from COVID. And it just took off like a rocket. The students reported such great engagement and so forth. So it's a freshman studies first semester course, maybe sort of an adulting sort of course. And as I said, the response from the students blew me away. I mean, the students would describe it. I have pages and pages here of, they put in paragraphs of what their experience was like near the end of the course and as the course goes on. And they say things like, it should be shared by all young people. This extremely opened my eyes. It was a well-deserved, a needed slap upside the head. I mean, those sort of things are what students are saying, because it's really introspective. The student is investigating themselves, and that's kind of a trick, because who would a student rather study than themselves, right? So the engagement is off the charts. And there's elements of therapy, self-reflection, journaling, all built into the course. And so the students are experiencing maybe something they've never dealt with in their lives, which was an honest and helpful and organized look into themselves, why they're here, why they're doing what they're doing, and some illumination of why other people do what they do. You know, that question is very good, and it's very normal because we've been content focused for the history of university, right? The course and the professor was up here, the God professor who owned all the content, the lowly student who was going to assimilate the content and be graded on how well they spat that content out or understood it or manipulated it and so forth. Well, when the content is mostly the student having their own self-revelations, what do you call that as far as, I mean, how do you do on the test about yourself sort of thing? So it's really the 14 or 15 self-reflection discussions and then the quizzes on the concepts therein that really show what they're getting as they go along. But then at the end, there's a final paper where they actually use the tools we've learned during the course to map their success. Who do you want to be? How do you want to get there? Dream your biggest dream, write it down, give them the parameters, put a number on it, things like that. In addition to answering one of the questions, one of my students who went on the road right after graduating with his music ed degree, he got a job on a cruise ship, and he said, I had 3 different math courses in college, but when I started working, I realized I didn't have a clue how to do my taxes. So that's chapter 8. Right, well, any student, when they experience the first sticker shock of the books they have to buy freshman year, first semester, they can't believe a book costs that much. And I specifically asked Kendall Hunt to keep this, make this the cheapest textbook any of the students will buy. That's my one request, because I really respect how hard, well, where I live and where I teach, most students do have to work outside of university to pay for it, or they've worked very hard in their lives, whether it's rural on a farm or in their little towns, diners, other sorts of jobs. So I really respect every dollar they earn. So yeah, it should be the cheapest textbook they have freshman year. You're looking at a failed biology major. Specifically, because of my love for fishing, I signed up to be a limnology major, the study of fishes and freshwater fishes. And I almost failed my first music major because I did not have the respect or the organization and was too highly creative to buckle down and do what everyone else does to get A's. Show up, learn, study, memorize, and so forth, and then give it back. So my curse was too much creativity and an inability to conform to established norms in society. I mean, I wasn't a criminal, but I had trouble establishing to norms in a society, and especially the structure of higher education. And especially I was with the baby boom. We were all competitive as heck. It was eat or be eaten in the courses because we were the baby boom. It was all competition. So fortunately, that creativity and drive created. I eventually learned the skills and got bachelor's, master's, doctorate. Went on the road and toured, and then got a couple of college jobs. This being the longest one, 24 years in running, and. But also that creativity and drive just didn't stop once I got inside these walls, and I created a success story for myself and my family beyond my wildest dreams. That's in the book as well. The point of the financial part of the book is a lot of it is my story, because I can't sue myself, for talking about myself and learning lessons from my mistakes. But it worked out really well for me. And I want students to say, wow, if he can do it, anyone can, including myself, the young freshman wondering why I'm even here. Right. There's very few competing books in the curriculum of university. To quote Jordan Peterson, which is at the beginning of the book, who's an internationally known psychologist and educator, he said, schools and universities do not encourage nor allow the teaching about one's self to the students. And which is why the majority of students, when they report, how are you doing? How are you feeling? They say, well, I'm insecure and kind of lost. Well, they've never dealt with themselves before. They've just dealt with all the curriculum. And that's why this book's focus, this course's focus, is getting the results it's getting. For example, the book's in 3 parts. The course is in 3 parts. Part 1, know thyself, to quote Socrates loosely, which is 5 weeks, maybe 6 weeks, where we go through different parts of how to know thyself, including Ruby Payne's. We with permission, we use Ruby Payne's social educational sociology and psychology to discover, where did I come from and where did my family come from? What values do we hold? What values do other classes in society hold that I've been hiding in plain sight? That's the second week of the course, which really knocks the kids off their feet a lot of times. We research personality traits and take a personality test, Myers-Briggs, just like you would for your first job. Then we take a long look at dangerous and toxic people and how to identify them, so we become a warrior in our own army to protect ourselves, whether it's in intimate relationships or in the workplace or in friendships. Toxic people will take you out. And a lot of the students say that chapter 4, where we deal with narcissism and toxic people, is one of the most valuable chapters of their lives, because until we see that there's people who can and will hurt us, we're lambs to a relative slaughterhouse. I would know, being a people pleaser. Then the second part is the numbers of your life, where we answer my one student's question. Yeah, we'll teach you about taxes and why you have to pay them and how, and so you're not afraid of them. That's called add, subtract, multiply, and divide, the numbers of your life. Either you control them or they will control you. Then we go on to in your working life in week 8, the 4 inevitable paths. You'll either be an employee, you'll be self-employed, you'll be a small business owner, or you'll be an investor. You will be one of those, and the majority, of course, will be employees, and we discover that. So really, the book is a series of observed discussions. Wagging my finger, we keep away from that as much as possible. And then the third part is relationships, which are called the forbidden discussions, which are really outlawed. The real impetus for this book was I had a discussion with a young woman who was graduating, asking her about, we spent the whole semester together in my course, and she had a whole bunch of things going for her. I said, hey, what are your thoughts about how your life is going to look? Have you thought about, is family important? Real innocent questions. And she said, oh, no, I didn't even think about that. Maybe in my 30s, family and blah, blah, blah. Well, a dean heard that I had talked to a student about that, and he took me aside and said, you cannot talk to students about that. That made me so mad that I said, not only am I going to talk to him about it, I'm going to write a book and design a course for it. So part 3 about relationships, the forbidden discussions, It talks about the four inevitable paths of your relationship life: single for life, single with children, married or partnered for life, or partnered with children for life. You will do one of those four. You may bounce between them, but you'll pay the price. So then chapter 11, why is there divorce? 50% of my students or more are children of divorce. For a lot of them, it's the first time they ever had an organized, loving discussion on the challenges they may face. Then we go on to what are your thoughts on having a family 10, 12? I tell my students a lot of times, I'm teaching you 10 years from now. And then we go on, then there's about 8 different appendices where we flesh out some of these other things. So there you go. That's the text in a nutshell, the course in a nutshell, and why it seems to go outside the guardrails of university curriculum and get such good results with students. Well, while I was teaching music appreciation, I would get emails from every publisher because it's a moneymaker, because it's a required course for most students in the liberal arts. So even in the sciences, you have to have a fine arts credit and, music, theater, or art. And so if you can adopt a textbook, it makes the company, the publisher, a lot of money. Well, all the text I was using were boring my students. I would joke with a colleague who taught alongside me. I'd go, it's their eyes. They're dying in lecture. we have to do something. So I started making it more student oriented. And so I would respond to these publishers' inquiries. Please use our music appreciation text with, I've got about 100 pages of my own lecture notes that seem to be working well. I bet we could turn it into a book. And wouldn't you know it, but Megan, she left now, but from Kendall Hunt, called me as I was skid loading snow in one of my apartments. Remember, I have a side business. And in that skid loader on a cold January morning, she said I described the book and the results I got from it. And she said, we want to offer you a contract and you're now an author. And the rest is history. It's just been delightful. My problem is making the deadlines for Kendall Hunt so we get this stuff out in time. They cap my course at 20 students, usually 5 or more beg to jump in. And I don't know how many they'd put in if they didn't cap it. I'll just read little sentences from 1, 2, 3, 4, 10, 12, 15 that are not asked for, by the way. Yes, it has helped me more than even I thought of right away. It's really opened my eyes to life in general more and how to improve it and what needs to get out of my life right now. That's a young man named Steve. Cannon says, I feel the first 5 weeks of the course has been very beneficial. I've learned a lot of things I otherwise would never have thought of. And that's a lot of the aha moments that happen in the course that really drive me. You said I seem rather personable. Well, that's because at my stage of life, I really am only in it for how well I can impact an individual student's life and get them out of where they're at and to get them on a road that they really never thought of before. Like a lot of times I get, are you serious that we could actually do that, Manhart? I'm going, yep, if I can, anyone can. Anyhow, Cole says, in all honesty, I really love this seminar. It's opened my eyes to new ways of looking at myself and the society around me. Eli says, I really appreciate the work you were doing, Dr. Manhart. When I discuss freshman seminars with my friends, the consensus is my seminar is my least favorite class. It's so boring, but this isn't the case with mapping your success. The content is interesting and fun, but I feel like the lessons in this class will benefit me more than any class I've ever taken. Braden says, and a lot of these guys are athletes who, they're tired. They work out at 6 in the morning. They're really here to be an athlete in Division II school that I teach at. And the last thing they want to have is a freshman seminar off topic, off of their major. And so when those guys respond, I really am honored that we're doing something. Braden says, I really thoroughly enjoyed this class. I personally think it's one of my favorites, and it teaches me a lot about who is in my life and what they want to do. It also opens up a lot about myself and kind of helped me realize who I am. Cal says, I think it's a very important thing that you're doing. Cal came here to play baseball. We're still in contact long after the court. Yeah, that was from a couple semesters ago. So a lot of these students stay in touch because there's a very therapeutic element to the course. He says, it's so important to talk about these things that are not talked about. So many teachers just preach the educational things and they never dig into real life situations and the things that actually matter. It's designed to flow at the speed of the student mind. Okay, I'm not trying to impress my colleagues with this book. I'm not citing papers, endlessly at the end of every chapter that no one would ever read and no one ever read except for my book, right? So, but we have links, to validate the information and validate facts and figures that we rely on. But again, it's designed to flow at the speed of the student mind, who takes in information extremely fast when it's in video form or Snapchat or TikTok and so forth. The student takes their information these days in fast, bite-sized portions. Superfluous content is avoided or merely linked. Discussions and the quizzes flow in weekly modules, so it's really easy to teach. And there's, with the appendices and so forth, an instructor can pick and choose what modules they want to use. Grading is really easy because the quizzes will self-grade right in the text. And the grading culminates in a final paper where the young adult actually forms a plan for their life. As I said, the most impactful and my real reason for living and doing these things is to affect students. I had one student, trombone major from a very small town, very humble upbringings, and she didn't have a lot brought to the table, not a lot of intellect, not a lot of talent, anything else, but she had kind of an outgoing personality. I worked with her for 4 years. She was in all my bands and pep band and my jazz band, but we'd take road trips and I would talk about, we have a lot of space between towns in South Dakota, so there's a lot of talking time or you're going to be quiet. And I'm not a quiet guy. So I would talk about real estate and the opportunities and so forth. Well, she left for a warmer climate to teach in Phoenix. And she's in the book, actually, in chapter 8, one of the success stories. She taught for about 3 years in a real rough elementary school. And then she said, something you would say, Manhart, I joined a real estate investing club. Well, this has been, I think, 8 years since she graduated. She just had her first 6-figure year. She quit her teaching job. She just got married and is now going to be a stay-at-home mom starting a family. And we've got all that in the chapter on her progression through that. Then there's another couple who paid off their student loans in 24 months. And we put their story at the end of one of the chapters. And then literally just 3 days ago, two of my students who married, husband, wife, were on the Dave, the financial guru who's on the radio all the time. Why does his last name just slip me? Anyhow, Dave Ramsey show. They were on the Dave Ramsey show, featured because they paid off $100-some thousand in loans, and they own a garbage truck business that's going gangbusters. And Dave Ramsey said, "You are going to be one of the richest couples in South Dakota because of what you did." And I feel I had a direct impact in all 3 of those sets of wonderful music people that went through my teaching through this sort of stuff. Any young person at college, you instinctively know, or maybe very obviously know, that at some point you are going to be a responsible adult. The big question is, how does one get there from here? And this book is intended to be a really valuable doorway into the type of thinking that would lead a young person from no matter where they came from. If you came from chaos, drama, and trauma of maybe of more of a poverty upbringing, or a stable middle class upbringing, maybe an upper middle class, maybe you came from wealth. All of those strata and those realities are encapsulated in this book, and the course is speaking to you on how you can get from a young student at university to a responsible adult contributing to your community, family, and beyond.